Good morning, everybody. Fancy a quickie? This is a really interesting little game. It's not the prettiest game in the world, but it's a really good example of what happens when the game just gets gummed up, right? So I've just played it this morning, 10-minute rapid. I'm on a big slide at the moment, but that's absolutely fine. So I'm on 1506 at this point. So my opponent's rated 1457, and we have a Scandinavian. And then we transpose into this pattern which looks like the French defence. So, for example, now if we had d4, we'd have a French advanced variation. Okay. However, after discussions, bringing out the bishop now, a few commenters have said this is now more like a Caro-Kann. That sometimes you advance the c pawn all the way to c5. But this is a nice, comfortable position, and White's already weakened himself a little bit with the f-pawn push, but that does do quite well in the French. Okay, so we have knight f3, and now I just complete my centre. Very comfortable position this. I'm quite used to it, and I'm happy that my bishop is on the outside of this pawn chain rather than stuck here, where it normally is in the French defence, so fairly good. d3 now, I guess, prevents my bishop from going in there, and also releases this dark square bishop to some extent, although it's still blocked in by this pawn on f4. I now spot an opportunity, so I'm thinking, bring my queen out to here and give check. Okay. Now this would be a blunder. Why would it be a blunder? Because of d4. Attacking the pin piece wins the knight. Okay. But also I thought if he blocks with a knight here, then that's not brilliant because he's blocking in his own bishop, might not be ideal. If he blocks with the bishop, I could, for example, come to here or here, and then target the b2 pawn, which the bishop is just undefended. Okay, so this is a pattern we know. So instead of that, he pushes c3, which is again very valid, keeps this pawn defended, blocks the check, does everything he needs to do, and also potentially prepares d4. Now, I hadn't really considered c3 as an idea, so maybe this was kind of a wasted move. But now this pawn is pinned, it has to be said. Okay, so I now develop my knight, getting control of the centre. This knight's going to have more trouble, but in the French defence, you've got a couple of ideas very often. Bringing the knight round here to attack this pawn. Now, in this instance, this pawn is defended, or you can sometimes come out here, sometimes tempting the dark square bishop to capture and opening up the g-file. But it's not. Okay, so yeah, so he develops his bishop, he's preparing to castle short, and I'm thinking about bringing my knight round to here, maybe at some point targeting this pawn. We shall see. And we have castles, knight g6, bishop out now. Okay, so he's got maybe ideas of pushing this pawn to attack the centre with a discovery against my queen. Okay, however, at the same time, he's just undefended this pawn here, so I resolve both issues at once. Okay, this is an opportunity here, and this one is a potential threat. So I avoid the threat and try to at least capitalise on the opportunity a little bit. And now he pushes another pawn, b3. So now I just develop my bishop, preparing to get my bishop out. This bishop's okay, but we're starting to look, right, 10 moves in, this is only like a 22 move game. It's starting to look quite blocky in the middle of the board, and that on the whole isn't good for bishops, doesn't really favour bishops. Okay, and now we have c4. At this point, I think for a minute 11, right, do I want to open things up? Do I want to block off the centre? Okay, now I figure if I do block off the centre, this is where the blockage is going to be. Okay, so then think about the lines on the board, the lines of attack. If the blockage is here, actually, his bishops aren't fantastic in the middle of the board, right? In this case, because they're looking towards the sides. We do have, if this is the blockage, this diagonal is still potentially, open. It might open up later on in the game. Yeah. These pawns could clear out the way. We could have, pawn breaks to open things up. And this is the way that I'm starting to find myself thinking more at the 1500 level than I did before, you know, thinking about the possibilities of attacking opportunities, right? I'm just trying to tilt it in my favour rather than my opponent's favour. So, in the end, after a long think, I decide to push d4 and block all this stuff off here, okay? And black plays his queen across to there. Now I'm kind of thinking, this is what I spotted, because obviously the bishop can't go there or there, so is he going here? This is my idea, right? But then I thought, actually, that square is defended twice, so I don't need to run away from shadows here, okay? He can't play his bishop there, because he'll lose a piece. End of story. So I don't have to move my queen or anything like that. Okay, so I just go ahead and castle. He plays his queen out now to g3. So this was the point of his move. Right, so he's pivoting his queen around here. And now, you know, there's a lot actually going on this board. I'm looking at this pawn, it's defended. Right, I'm looking at this pawn, it's defended. His dark squared bishop has no prospects right now. You know, this pawn is currently blocked by my bishop, and we have locked pawns on 3 consecutive files, C, D, and E. So, I now bring my queen down to d8, thinking if this knight ever moves, for example, I've got bishop in here, and at this point I decide the action area on the board is going to be the king side, right? We want to be going after this area of the board. The queen side doesn't matter, okay? Yeah, pawns might come up, they might exchange off, rooks might exchange off, but it feels like it's all going to go down around here, okay? So for that reason, I bring my queen there just to back up my bishop with potential ideas. Black plays the bishop back to e1, also backing up his queen, and also arguably defending this, because now he's got 1, 2, 3 defenders of that square, right? And I've got 1, 2, 3 pieces attacking it, so I now can't put my bishop on there, because say knight takes knight, queen takes knight, and queens aren't, you know, if we trade off queens, I'm just down a piece, I think, from that. Okay, so now I just kind of distract him with a5. I couldn't, this is kind of a holding move. I couldn't really think of anything else to do. So I'm kind of waiting for my opponent to, you know, open up a little chink in his armour, right? Say, come on, swing at me. Let's see what we can do. He brings his knight round, which I'm not convinced by. He probably should have tried to get his knight maybe somewhere around here. Okay, but so this is now, I mean, what's he going to do with it? He could come in here, and I looked at that. So this is what you have to do. You have to look at that and go, well, where can the knight go from there? Nothing. He's got nothing, yeah? So we can ignore the knight and crack on with our idea. So 29-second think. I bring my knight round now, but there is a point to this one, because now I've got 2 attackers on this pawn, right? Yeah? Okay, he decides to take out my knight with his dark squared bishop. I don't think that's a fantastic idea, because he's got a lot of pawns on light squares here. His dark squared bishop is quite good. I take the pawn now with tempo, and his knight has to retreat, or come into my position where there's nothing on, you know? What's he going to do? That knight is no threat. So, you know, does it help my opponent to have that piece in the quiet end of my camp? I don't know. Anyway, so now 46-second think, and I decide it's time to mix things up. Right? We've got a lot of all that's been exchanged is those 2 minor pieces so far. Right? That's the first action, just a few moves ago. Right? So I decide that I'd like to clear a path here, right? I have 2 bishops. They're arguably better. My opponent's bishop is poor. This knight is misplaced now. I have my knight over here in a reasonable position. You know, I've got 4 pieces, 5 pieces arguably that could attack. So let's open up the rook. Let's make something happen, okay? My opponent now plays the move h3. Okay, which is curious. I mean, and you have to say, well, what does this move do? Okay, it guards this square. It unguards the queen, for example, right? And at this point, So I've been having a think as well on my previous move, right? And I decide now that I have to break open the position, okay? Now, this very much comes down to the evaluation of pieces, right? And one thing, you know, as you grow out of beginner phase into becoming an intermediate to advanced player, one thing that you need to learn along the way is that pawns aren't worth 1, bishops aren't, and knights aren't worth 3, rooks aren't worth 5, okay? The value of a piece on the board is very much dependent on the context of the board. So as things stand, I'm looking at my light squared bishop, right? My opponent's got, like we say, 6 pawns on light squares. My light squared bishop, how many squares has it got where it can go? None. Can't go there, gets taken. Can't go there, it gets taken. Okay? So, and then I'm evaluating, well, what is the value of, you know, these pawns over here? They're almost more valuable than my bishop as things stand on the board. Now, the piece value can also change. It can evolve as the game changes, because pieces come off the board in chess, they never come back on, at least with the regular rules, yeah? So, you know, a game can open up, and as a game opens up, bishops can become stronger. As pawn breaks are made and pawns come off the board, bishops could, you know, discover new diagonals and become really, really powerful. But in this case, I decide to sack. So I sack my bishop on h3, and here's my thinking. If pawn takes, okay, I would take this pawn here, that's my idea, right? Opening up my rook, right? And if his pawn takes, suddenly he's got no pawns on these 2 files. Okay, I've got a rook lined up, and we've just opened up. This bishop becomes better, this knight has prospects, okay? If queen takes, that's a blunder. That's quite bad, because then I can capture this pawn with my knight, hitting the queen, and also hitting this bishop with a fork, and the queen from here can't get back and defend the bishop. The bishop is otherwise undefended. So that's a really good reason why you should build into your kind of, what are the pluses and minuses, the positives and negatives, the merits, demerits of each move when you are considering your candidate moves, okay? Putting a piece on a square where it is undefended is a minus point, okay? It's a negative. Moving a piece away where you are undefending a piece is also a negative. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't ever do it, but it means that it should factor into your calculation, okay? So, obviously, white makes the right decision, captures with the pawn. And now, look, the G file is completely open, okay? I make my move in 1 second. I'd already prepared it in my mind, okay? And I think there's another hint there. There's another good tip for you guys, which is very often, the more time, when you identify this is a crunch point, okay? This is a key moment in the game. When you identify that, investing more time in kind of pre-assessing, pre-calculating the situation before you take action means that very often your opponent then has to invest time in thought. So my opponent there had to think for 1.5 minutes, okay? And then snap, 1.1 seconds, because I'd already figured out what I was going to do. So I spent more time on my previous couple of moves, kind of brewing this idea. And then, so once my bishop took, I knew exactly what I was going to do next, okay? And now I'm spending less time because I'd already prepared it, right? And my opponent now is the one panicking. I'm in my mind at least, okay? So he takes with a knight. I think for 30 seconds, and I capture the... No, I don't capture, I just play my bishop out to h4, right? I am just wanting now to mix things up. My opponent's on 3 minutes 22, I'm 3:41, okay? Now, I'm looking at where can the queen go, okay? Can't go on any of her own squares, now can't go here, 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 right? Can't go there because of the bishop, can't go there because of the pawn. So, you know, what's she got? She's got 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 squares to go to, okay? And there's time pressure. My opponent now plays queen f3, okay? Now this is obviously a blunder, right? I have 2 good moves here, right, I have rook takes pawn here, because basically what he's done, again, here's the pattern. He's lined up two important pieces, two valuable pieces, two major pieces on the same file behind a pawn that is overwhelmed. Okay, so yes, there's two attackers and there's two defenders, which means I don't win a piece, but the first defender is a queen. So if I take queen takes, rook takes rook, happy days. I've got myself a queen and a pawn in return for a knight and a rook. Okay, that's always going to be good. And having two rooks in the endgame, all good. And of course I've got the only queen, so no, I've lost my rook. He's got two rooks in the endgame, but I've got a queen. All right, so now I spot this. Okay, so this was also an idea, right? Knight to here. Okay, knight to here with ideas of a discovery on the queen, but I thought this was better. Okay, now where can the queen go? Okay, where can the queen go? And this is really interesting because I did a video just the other day on traps, and the key exercise in traps is highlight the squares, or in your mind highlight the squares where the piece can't go. Now the queen can actually go here as well, right? Sorry, can't go there, can't go there. This is an option, right? This is an option, and this is an option, and this is an option. Okay, that's out because of the pawn. Okay, and my opponent's got 3 minutes, has to think of something. Plays queen to h5. And pause the video if you like at this time and figure out for yourself the last move of the game before white resigns. All right, welcome back. I hope you have found the killer move, rook f5, and the queen is trapped, boys and girls. Okay, knight covers these, rook covers this whole thing, the queen defends the bishop. Okay, pawns have got all of these squares, and the queen is dead. Yes, Regina mortura est. So, tough one for my opponent, but for me that was a really satisfying one. And I think it all kind of comes down to this, you know, this here and the bishop sack, you know, deciding to give up my bishop, which is worth a nominal 3 points, really only for a single pawn that's worth 1. But it's more than that. It's more than just raw material. Chess is not decided by who has the most material. It's who wins the game, okay? So, nice satisfying one there. Hope that's been useful for all of you guys. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to Chess Bootcamp if you haven't subscribed, and I'll see you soon.